When Hayley Wickenheiser announced she was leaving the Toronto Maple Leafs after 8 years, I think a lot of people assumed it was just another front office change during a busy NHL offseason. But the more I looked into what she actually said, the more I realized this story isn't really about one executive walking away. Here's what I'm hearing around the league. This is one of the clearest signs yet that the Maple Leafs are entering a completely different era under new general manager John Chayka. And what Wikenheiser said about that transition is exactly why so many people around hockey are paying attention. The announcement itself caught plenty of people off guard. Wikenheiser wasn't a coach behind the bench every night, and she wasn't making headlines after every game. Most of her work happened behind the scenes, but inside hockey circles, her reputation has always been enormous. We're talking about one of the greatest players the sport has ever produced, a Hockey Hall of Famer, an Olympic legend, someone who successfully transitioned from an incredible playing career into hockey operations with one of the NHL's biggest franchises. That's why her words mattered. Here's what she made clear. After conversations with John Chayka, she came to the conclusion that the organization was moving in a different direction. She didn't launch into criticism. She didn't accuse anyone of making the wrong decision. She didn't suggest there was some dramatic confrontation behind closed doors. Instead, she explained that the new leadership had a different vision for where the organization was headed, and that realization ultimately led to her decision to leave. To me, that's the most important part of this entire story. From what I've been told and based on the reporting that's now available, this wasn't about personal conflict. It was about organizational philosophy. Those are two very different things. Every time a new general manager takes over an NHL team, changes are inevitable. Some happen immediately, others take months to unfold. But eventually, every executive wants a management group that reflects his own ideas, priorities, and long-term strategy. That's exactly how I read this situation. When John Chayka arrived, everyone expected change. Maybe not overnight, but change nonetheless. He's built a reputation as someone who's willing to rethink traditional hockey operations. Throughout his career, he's embraced modern approaches, analytics, and organizational restructuring. Whether people agree with every decision he's made is another discussion, but one thing has always been true. He's never been afraid to reshape an organization according to his own vision. And that's where Wikenheiser's announcement becomes much more significant than it first appeared. Think about everything that's happened over the last several days. We've seen coaching changes, we've seen front office restructuring, we've seen experienced people leave the organization. Now, one of the most respected names in hockey operations is stepping away after 8 years. Individually, each move might seem manageable. Put them together, though, and a much larger picture begins to emerge. People around the league believe Toronto isn't making small adjustments anymore. They're conducting a broad organizational reset. Now, before anyone jumps to conclusions, let's stay with the facts. Wikenheiser's own statement was remarkably gracious. She thanked Brendan Shanahan. She thanked Brad Treliving. She thanked the coaches, players, and staff she worked alongside during her 8 seasons with the organization. There wasn't bitterness in her message. There wasn't resentment. If anything, there was appreciation for the opportunity and respect for the people she worked with throughout those years. That tells me something. If this had been a hostile departure, her statement probably would have carried a very different tone. Instead, she acknowledged that the organization is entering a new chapter, and she chose to move on rather than continue in a role that no longer matched where the franchise was headed. Here's what I'm hearing from people who follow front office changes closely. Situations like this happen more often than fans realize. New general managers inherit staff members hired by previous leadership groups. Some stay, some leave voluntarily. Others move into different positions. It's simply part of professional sports. But because this involves Hayley Wickenheiser, everything carries more weight. You aren't talking about an ordinary executive. You're talking about someone whose hockey resume is almost unmatched. 4 Olympic gold medals, 1 Olympic silver, multiple world championships, a Hall of Fame career. Then after retirement, she continued building a reputation away from the ice, studying medicine while contributing to one of hockey's biggest organizations. That kind of credibility can't be ignored. From what I've been told, Wikenheiser earned tremendous respect inside the Maple Leafs organization during her time there. Much of her work centered on player development and hockey operations. She wasn't constantly speaking to the media, which meant many fans never fully appreciated the scope of her responsibilities, but internally she was viewed as someone whose opinions mattered. That's another reason why this story has generated so much discussion. It's not simply that someone left, it's who left. My take on this is that the biggest headline isn't actually Wikenheiser's departure itself. The real headline is what her departure appears to represent. When someone with 8 years invested in an organization publicly says conversations with the new general manager made it clear there was a different vision, that's a meaningful statement. Not because it's confrontational, but because it's honest. She essentially told everyone that the franchise is changing. And if you've been following Toronto closely this offseason, that shouldn't come as a surprise. The latest information I'm hearing is that Chayka has been evaluating nearly every area of hockey operations since taking over. Again, that's exactly what many new executives do. They assess personnel, review internal processes, and determine which people best fit the direction they want to pursue over the coming years. Sometimes those evaluations lead to difficult decisions. Sometimes respected people leave. Sometimes entirely new voices arrive. That's the reality of leadership transitions in professional sports. Now let's talk about something that has sparked plenty of debate among fans, the phrase different vision. I've seen countless theories online about what that actually means. Some people immediately assumed there must have been disagreements. Others suggested Wikenheiser was unhappy with the direction of the franchise. But here's how I see this situation. There's no credible reporting that points to personal conflict between Wikenheiser and Chayka. None. Instead, her own words suggest something much simpler. The organization is heading in a direction that no longer aligned with where she saw herself contributing. Those aren't the same thing. That's an important distinction because it allows us to appreciate the professionalism shown by everyone involved. League sources indicate the Maple Leafs remain committed to reshaping multiple departments as they prepare for the next phase of the organization's development. Whether every move proves successful won't be known for months or perhaps even years. But it's becoming increasingly clear that Chayka isn't interested in making cosmetic changes. He's building the organization he wants. Now let's consider this from Toronto's perspective. The Maple Leafs have spent years trying to break through in the playoffs. Different coaches have come and gone, different players have arrived, front office leadership has evolved. Eventually, every organization reaches a point where management decides incremental adjustments aren't enough. My take is that Toronto believes it's reached that point. That's why we're seeing changes across multiple levels rather than one isolated move here or there. For Wikenheiser, this also represents the end of a significant chapter. 8 years is a long time in professional sports. During that span, she watched prospects develop into NHL players. She contributed behind the scenes through player development and hockey operations. She became one of the most recognizable women working in an NHL front office, inspiring many people far beyond the Maple Leafs organization. That legacy doesn't disappear because she's moving on. If anything, I think her contributions will be appreciated even more now that she's leaving. One question I've heard repeatedly is whether another NHL team will pursue her. Nothing is official yet, but here's what I'm hearing. Given her experience, reputation, and connections throughout hockey, it would surprise many people around the league if she stayed away from the sport for very long. Executives with her background don't become available very often, whether that's another NHL front office, an international hockey role, player development, or something entirely different remains to be seen. But I would be very surprised if this turns out to be the final chapter of her hockey career. As for the Maple Leafs, the spotlight now shifts back to John Chayka. Every significant organizational change naturally increases expectations. Fans want to know where the team is heading. They want to understand why respected people are leaving and what new leadership intends to build in their place. That's why I don't think this story ends with Wikenheiser's announcement. I think it's only one chapter in a much larger offseason transformation. People around the league are already watching closely to see whether more changes are coming. Given everything that's happened over the past several days, I don't believe anyone would be shocked if additional moves follow. And that's really where this story becomes fascinating, not because Hayley Wickenheiser publicly criticized the Maple Leafs, she didn't, not because there was confirmed drama behind closed doors. There isn't credible reporting to support that. The real story is that one of hockey's most respected figures looked at the direction of one of the NHL's biggest franchises, recognized that a new vision was taking shape under new leadership, and decided it was the right time to step aside. Sometimes the loudest message isn't delivered through controversy. Sometimes it's delivered through a calm, respectful statement that quietly tells you an organization is changing from the inside out. And if the moves we've already seen are any indication, this probably won't be the last significant decision the Maple Leafs make before this new era fully begins.